So I'm going to do a quick walkthrough through the engine. Just make that bit. Okay, so right now the scene is not being simulated, so the physics in the scene is not being simulated. So if I press play, the physics is going to get simulated, just like you might have seen in other engines. I have a script attached to the red cube right there, so I can move the cube using the arrow keys, as well as some other keys to move it in the x-axis, in the z-axis. And you notice that the red cube do not follow the laws of physics when it's being controlled. So with my arrow keys I completely take over the physics, apart from the frictional rotational movement due to friction. Move forwards and backwards in the z-axis as well. And I also have a script attached to the camera, so I can move the camera around. I can move it forwards and backwards. The z-axis, I can rotate it. So, in the scene hierarchy panel you can see all the entities that exist within the scene. And if I click on an entity, I can see the properties of that entity in the properties panel. And the name of the entity, I can rename the entity to anything I want. And if the entity has a physics object attached, then obviously you're going to see some physics related properties that can be changed. So if I change, I don't know if I see the object, but if I change the velocity in x-axis for an object, it's going to continue moving in that direction with that velocity. And I can change other things like mass, static friction, dynamic friction, restitution, density, etc. I can also press restart to restart the whole scene. You'll notice this object is already moving because we did not press pause before we restarted, so we might want to press pause and then restart the whole thing. And then it's going to stay there until we press play. I can also create a new entity. So if I right click in the scene hierarchy panel, I can create a new empty entity, and if I click on that, it's going to have nothing apart from a transform component attached to it. And I can name this entity anything I want. And then I can go ahead and add a component to it. So notice at the moment we have camera, sprite renderer, 3D cube, 3D textured cube, and obviously I need to add the physics component as well. So I'm going to create a 3D textured cube, and it's going to be created at the center. So if I move it outside the center, then you can see it comes out in front of the because it was behind the red cube, so we couldn't see it. And since it's a textured cube, I can attach any other texture to it. So first I'm going to scale it so we can see the other texture properly. I'm going to move it up a bit. Scale on the z-axis. And then I'm going to press on select texture and go to the assets, textures. I've got a bunch of textures here, so I'm going to attach a wood texture to it. As you can see, it's got wood texture. I can attach something else if I want. Now it's got a rock texture. I can also switch to different examples without having to rebuild the whole scene. So if I go to this example section here, obviously I need to put in a different section apart from instead of being in the stats section, which is the wrong place to be. But for the moment, for demonstration purposes, that's going to be fine. So I'm going to select example 2. And so you can see I haven't really bothered to change the position of the objects in the new scene, but you can do that and that will be perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be identical to the first scene, it could be something completely different, and the whole point is that you can have a scene set up in the engine without having to rebuild it. And here's another one. Okay, so that's about the extent of what the the features are for the engine, and as this is an ongoing project, I would be adding new features to it as I go. And one of the new things I need to be adding to the project is a new rendering API called Vulkan, which has proven to be much more efficient and fast in terms of rendering objects to the screen. Also need to add things like serialization, memory management, and a bunch of other stuff.